There, welcome to this protein powered video cooking class where I'm going to share with you how to use the protein powered baking mix to make some wraps. So, this recipe is just add water. And so, if that's all you have, you literally can make yourself a wrap that you can take to lunch or, just make at home for lunch or dinner. You can just do a regular sandwich wrap that you would be used to making, or for dinner, you can actually take some roasted vegetables and then put the wrap around them, put a nice sauce on, and you've got a protein balanced meal and very low carb. So I'm going to share with you some different options for making that. So the first thing is yes, you can just use water if you like. However, there's some other things that you can use that are like water that you have in your kitchen that probably go to waste that you can use instead of water to add flavor to your wraps. So one of them is some uh, the juice from fermented vegetables. So this is some sauerkraut that I bought here, handmade in Mexico. And I'm going to actually use this today to make my protein wraps. You can also use the juice from olives or pickles to add flavor, which is another, like, it's nice and salty and has its own, flavor to it that most people like the taste of pickles. You could add vegetable broth or meat broth as well instead of using just water, and you'll get the same effect, but you'll be adding nutrition and flavor. So the thing to know about the wrap that's different than, say, the pancake is that you don't want it to sit for long before you start to cook it, because you want it to be watery. You don't want it to start to thicken up, right? Because in the mix there's psyllium, and psyllium will expand and get thicker as it sits. So what we want to do is we want to get everything ready to go on the pan. It's really great to have something like a crepe pan because it makes it a lot easier to work with and flip. This is the rock pan, and it's a non-stick pan. I recommend ceramic non-stick if you can do that instead of Teflon, because obviously that's healthier. And you can basically just take a quarter cup of the mix to make one wrap, and that is going to give you 16 grams of protein. So you can take any meal that you have and convert it into a protein forward meal just by using a wrap as an addition or as the basis of protein in your meal. So I'm going to show you here. Well, actually, first, let's talk about oil. So I'm going to use actually, this is a coconut oil spray. And the reason I'm going to use the spray is because for this recipe, you don't want a lot of fat. You just want enough so that it coats the pan and you don't get a stick. You don't get a sticky wrap, right? So I'm just going to spray it. Like, for example, if you use coconut oil, or that's not in a spray, or olive oil, you'll probably end up putting too much on the pan. And then what happens is it starts to make little holes in the wrap. So, which is fine. You can still have a wrap with little holes in it if you want. So, you don't throw it out if you add too much oil. You can still use it. But just to make that perfect wrap that's easy to fold and all that, you just don't want it to have a ton of fat. So I don't know if you can see it on here. You can't see too much fat, but it's enough that it's coated everywhere. Okay. It's really important to have a non-stick pan to do this kind of a recipe. So I don't recommend trying it on stainless steel or cast iron. You can get away with that for pancakes, but this is a little bit more finicky. So we have our wrap pan ready. And okay, so here's the thing. You don't want your pan to be hot either when you start. We're going to do this as fast as we possibly can without it getting too hot. Now, I'm going to make probably the worst wrap that I could make here in this particular kitchen because I'm traveling in Mexico and I'm using a gas stove that I have to light, and I can't control the temperature. But if I was in my kitchen at home, I would be cooking this on medium. So I know exactly every time what temperature I'm getting, but I can't actually make anything here that is the right temperature. So trust me, if I can make it here, you can make it at your place where you have control over the heat. So I'm going to be turning it on last minute, and I'm going to turn it on so that it's the lowest temperature possible here in this kitchen. So I'm going to get my mix ready. So again, this is for one wrap. I'm just going to take a quarter cup of the mix. I'm going to put it in there. So that part's ready. I'm going to measure the liquid. So I'm going to grab the sauerkraut juice. But I'm not going to put it on yet. I just got to like get everything in the right sequence so that the pan doesn't get too hot too quick, and so that I can immediately pour this onto the pan so that it spreads evenly. So I'm just going to put it to the side here. Got a little bit of sauerkraut in here that I'm going to get out. Okay, there we go. So you want this batter to be watery, so don't worry if it is, because that's what you want. All right, now I'm ready. I've got everything. I've got my fork, I'm ready to stir it. I've got my pan that is ready to go. I just need to turn on the heat to low. So here we go. There we go. Okay, so I got it on the lowest temperature. Now I'm going to put my liquid into my wrap here. I don't have even this on the stove quite yet. Again, I'm nervous about this stove being that it's going to be really hot quick. So when you first put the water in, you start mixing it, and you feel almost like it's not going to mix in. Just so you know, that's what's going to happen. You're going to be like, oh, this isn't working. It's like, it's not going to be watery. It's like sticking, it's clumping. That's okay. Just keep going. It unclumps as you go. But I want to do this quite quickly because, like I said, I don't want it to get thick. I want it to spread. Now, because my pan is not hot before I put it down, this is even less likely to thicken up and start spreading too quickly. But let's say my pan was too hot and I started putting this on, it would just start going like this, and then the batter would start splitting apart because of the heat. Okay, so I'm going to put it on here, and I'm literally just going to turn it all the way around. Okay, so make it even. You can see the whole thing is spread, and now I'm going to put it up here. Now there's still 2 pieces of sauerkraut in here. I'm just going to pick out with my fingers. It really doesn't matter, but let's get this wrap without anything in it. So I picked it off, and you can see it's cooking there. And one of the things is that I can't tell you the exact time, right? Because I don't know what your oven is like, what your medium really is like. So the most important thing to look for with this is you'll see, like, it'll start kind of bubbling, and then it'll start lifting up. You can see the side lifting up. And once you see the sides lifting up, that's a good time to flip it. And another thing you'll see is it doesn't really look even. You can see that you can kind of see the pan in the middle, like it got thicker on the outside here. The reason why is because it's a crepe pan, right? And it has those divots, but that's totally okay. Even though it is on the inside a little bit thinner, it's still going to be a great wrap. And yeah, it's going to be totally fine. So with these wraps, if you do them for the shortest amount of time possible, you're going to actually get a wrap that is softer and more pliable and less likely to crack, which is, kind of surprising, right? So you want to not overcook it as much as possible. Of course, if you do overcook it, you can still use it, but it's going to be a little bit crispy and it might crack a little bit. If I ever overcook it, what I do is I take it and I cut it into like tortilla squares, and then I take those and I refry them in oil so they're like a chip, which is really good. That's your tortilla chip kind of version. So here it's going. What else can I tell you about this wrap? It freezes well. You can actually take it on a trip with you, like pre-make them in advance and then take them with you. When you take them out of the freezer, they don't dry out or anything like that. So you just roll them up and stick them in a container or a bag. Put them in the freezer or the fridge, and they work fantastic for traveling. As you can see, of course, you can only make one at a time if you don't have anything other than a crepe pan or just one crepe pan. So I'm just gonna get my little flipper here. So you're going to want to have a decent size flipper that's wider to be able to do this. So I can see that this one actually, with that particular sauerkraut, it actually cracked a little bit, which is fine. It doesn't, that's, of course it's doing that when I'm doing this video, right? But it's actually, that doesn't always happen. So I don't know. It's like a little bit risky when you add new things into the wrap, but it's still going to work. I'll show you. Okay, so I can see right now that it's just starting to flip away from the side. So I'm going to lift it a little bit. Okay, so when I did that, it was just not quite ready because it cracked a little bit on the side. So I'm just going to wait. It's going to actually lift. The more patient you are, the better. One of the things you can do as far as a fix is there's still a little bit of the batter in there. So I can just take a little bit of that batter and fix that crack. So actually now I'm glad that that happened with this, because it's really good to learn how to fix things, right? Like you don't have to write it off. So that's going to start cooking there. That's what I like about this, is it's so versatile, right? If you want a thicker wrap that's more like a gyro or something like that, you can make the exact same, use the exact same method, but instead of using water or pickle juice or sauerkraut juice, you can use like almond milk or coconut milk or regular milk, and you'll get a totally different texture, but it'll be the exact same method. So I wanted to teach you to just make water because it's simple. When you have nothing on hand, then you can literally just make a wrap. So it's great for when you're either in a bind because you haven't gone grocery shopping, you only have a few vegetables left, or if you want to take a wrap for lunch, if you're somebody who prefers not to eat bread because it doesn't agree with you, or because you don't want to eat carbs. Okay, so now I can see it's pulling more away from the side here. So I'm going to, it's going to be much easier now. Pull it off so you can see it. I don't know, it's kind of hard to, but there, you can kind of see here it's lifted at the side. That's a sign to me that it's going to be flippable now. And once you flip it onto the other side, it's going to be, you don't have to cook it as long, it's almost cooked, basically. First, it cooks really, because it's so thin. So I usually just grab it with my finger a little bit. Sometimes you have to kind of try to figure out which side it's easier to flip it. So here we go. So now it's flipped. And there we go. So I've probably just have it about a minute at this point because it's quite well cooked on this side. And like I said, I'm in a kitchen that is not my regular kitchen, and I'm dealing with this gas stove. So it's going to be easier for you once you figure out, what works well for your kitchen and in your oven or your stovetop. Here we go. I have a wrap. And so like I mentioned, because this one had a little bit of a crack in it, it's not going to fold well, right? Like it's not going to completely fold. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to make the chapatis. So I'll just literally cut it up and I will fry it in some oil with a little bit of salt. And I'm going to take this off the stove here and I'm going to show you it with just water so you can see the difference. Okay. So let's say at home you were making two, like you're making it for two people. Take this off the stove because you want it to cool down. Turn off your oven because you do not want to put the batter on that hot thing because it'll just start splattering like I mentioned before. So while that's cooling down, I am going to these up and make us some chips. Everything is salvageable. Okay, so I'm going to take this pan so that we don't get the other one hot again. You can put coconut oil or olive oil. I'm just going to grab olive oil because it's easier for me at this moment. If you have gut issues, you probably don't want to cooked olive oil because it's not going to be quite as healthy as your raw olive oil. More saturated fats like coconut oil and butter are better for higher temperatures. But right now we're just going for pleasure and fun. Just put quite a bit of oil in there, generous amount, so that it's super tasty. And then I'm just going to put that in there and make ourselves some chips while the other one is cooling down. What else can I tell you about the wraps that you can do with them? I think I covered all the basic things that I personally use them for. And like I said, you do get a completely different texture depending on what kind of milk. So if you use dairy, you're going to get a different texture than if you use coconut milk, than if you use almond milk. Each one of them is completely different, and that's kind of what makes it fun and versatile, that you never get bored, right? Because there's just so many different things that you can make. Okay, so one side done, flip over the other side. Okay, so here you go. You have, not only do you have low carb chips, but they're high in protein, so you can get your protein up in your day, even while you're having a treat. So you can see here they're sauteing in there. It doesn't take very long, as you can see, to cook this. One thing to know is that this mix, it actually absorbs quite a lot of fat. If you don't want everything to have a lot of fat in it, let's say you have issues with your gallbladder or something like that, you can't tolerate fat, you should contact me because there are things you can do about that. And I never really formally introduced myself. My name is Sherry Rockwell, and I am a holistic nutritionist, and I am the developer of this pancake mix, or this protein mix. It used to be a pancake mix only, but we discovered that there were so many different things that you could make with it that we've rebranded it as a baking mix. Okay, so yeah, it absorbs a lot of fat. So if you don't want that for whatever reason, then you want to use the spray bottles, right? Because you can control the amount of fat that you get in your food when you use this. And of course, when you use a nonstick, like let's say you were making pancakes, then you would want to, you might use more like other kinds of pans. And if you do, then you have to use a lot more fat. But if you don't use the regular pans, use the nonstick, you can get away with using a lot less fat. Yeah, the color of these is quite different than when you use just water. Again, because there was turmeric in the sauerkraut juice. Put that oil in the garbage. Okay, and that was quite, like these chips are going to be, they're quite more baked than I would do them at, like I said, at home, because that was the lowest temperature. Oh no, it wasn't. I didn't turn it down. That was the highest temperature. Oh my goodness. Okay. So you can see me like totally botching this and still getting good product out of it. Okay. Let's see. Let's go now for a just water. We'll get rid of the sauerkraut juice and do a just water version. maybe we should do a milk one too, just so you can see the difference. Why not? Let's go all the way. Okay, so we have our baking mix. We don't have a logo or anything on this because I handmade this for my trip to Mexico. But if you go to proteinpowered.shop, you can see all the macros and everything that is in it. This is for a quarter cup serving, we got 16 grams of protein. We have 4 grams of fiber and 1 gram of carb due to the lactose in the whey. So this is made of grass-fed whey, baking soda, apple cider vinegar, and psyllium husk. So it's gluten-free as well. So low carb and gluten-free and high protein. Okay. So let's see here. Now we've had this pot sitting, or pan sitting over here, so it's still a little bit hot. So this is probably going to surprise me what's going to happen here, but let's try it again. Okay. So let's first turn this on and make sure I'm turning it on to low, not high. Down to low. I'm gonna make sure that oil is evenly spread. You know, sometimes when you've had your pans for a while, they tend to, I don't know, lose their non-stickness. So this one, it's starting to lose it a bit in the middle. But it's completely worth it to, I don't know if you can see this, it's a little clumpy right now. See how it's still clumpy? But you just keep going. And it will start to go down. Getting warm while I'm stirring this. I'm putting the batter on, and then I am all the way around. There we go. There we go. So you can see that we kind of already have a very different crepe or wrap. So if you were to make a crepe, you'd be adding some actual milk or milk alternative and an egg. And we do have a recipe for that on the website as well. So it'd be a similar method, but just different ingredients. So on our website, there is a ton of different recipes of things that you can make. It's funny because the Just Add Water recipe, they are the easiest in a sense, right? Because you don't really need anything other than water. But they are a little bit more finicky than the ones that use milk or milk alternatives. So that's why I thought of making a little cooking class for these guys, because as simple as they are, they do have some little idiosyncrasies that I wanted to demonstrate for you, and I already have. So, it kind of worked out that I screwed it up the first one. So let's see. Of course, you could also put salt on it. It's nice and crunchy. It's really good. This one doesn't need salt because it has sauerkraut juice in it, which is salty. And yeah, you can see it's like overcooked. But even that doesn't taste bad. If you had some dip, that'd be really good. But it really tastes like chips. Something that you can't get, right? Like to get something that is a chip that's low carb, and then on top of it, it's natural whole food ingredients. Like there's nothing in there but grass-fed whey and psyllium, baking soda, apple cider vinegar. So I love this mix. I use it every single day, literally, like sometimes twice a day. And it's not just because it's healthy and it makes a protein-forward balanced meal, and it's good for my blood sugar and my weight and all those kinds of things. But it's so easy, right? Like I don't really have to think too much about it. It's kind of always the center of what I'm making. I don't have to think too hard. And all the recipes are on the website, so you don't have to think that hard either. Okay, so you can see it's already lifted up at the side. Okay, so I know it's ready. So I'm going to take off the heat here. I'm going to pull it and flip. And you can see it's very different than the one with the sauerkraut juice. So I'm not going to have it for very long because I don't want it to get too stiff. If you wanted to, you could have sprayed a little bit of oil on the pan again if you want, but you don't particularly want that. So here you go. You can see I have a wrap. It's nice and pliable. Okay. And you can put it in the fridge for your lunch tomorrow, or of course eat it right away. And there, that's the texture that you get when you make it with just water, which is fantastic. And if you use the pickle juice, I find it's a lot more like bread than if it's just water. Obviously, water doesn't have any flavor. So there we go. Super happy about that. Okay, take this off. Let's see the difference with some milk. I'm going to use coconut milk because it has some fat in it, which is going to give it a little bit different texture than the watery one. So, okay, this is off the stove. This is off. And let's get this out. And another tin. This. While I'm doing this, there's another thing I wanted to show you that's kind of fun. You can get these egg things to make like eggy things. I don't know what they call them, like almost like poached eggs or whatever. And then you can fill the mix in here and make like bread, again with just water, and you can make like a little breakfast sandwich. And again, the pickle juice to me used instead of water somehow reminds me of like McDonald's. I don't know why. So if you do that, you can put an egg in it, some cheese, and like have like a little egg sandwich. That is like comfort food, but healthy. Here we go again. We're getting everything ready so that we don't want the pan too hot, and we don't want the mix sitting very long because we don't want it to thicken. We want to spread it on the pan before it thickens. This in here. So because there's a little bit of in coconut milk, it's going to give it a different texture. If you use regular whole milk, it's going to be even more creamy, of course. I don't have any of that right now. The only thing I have is half and half, and that would make it like probably too creamy. But you can try it. Just try any like type of liquid, and you'll see that you get all these different variations. Try it again. We don't want that. We want enough oil so that it doesn't stick, but not too much oil because we don't want it to separate the mix. Okay, so that's almost ready to go. I can have a fork. And coconut milk in there. Stirring it. This on as well. It's low. Again, it's low on my stove because I've got the gas stove, but on your stove, it should be medium. On a regular, not gas stove. So it's actually, it doesn't stick as much. It starts to look like more thick right away and not like like it's clumping. It doesn't clump as much with actually cream. The fat really changes things. So here we go. I'm not starting with a pot that is, or a pan that is hot, because again, if we do, it's going to stick more. So it's harder to get it to go to all the different, sorry. It's harder to get it to go to both sides. You have to keep going around and around because it wants to stick. It doesn't want to go as flat like the water does. Okay, but here we go. That's with coconut milk. It's much thicker batter. So yeah, it's more likely to be harder to spread if the pan is too hot or you're not moving fast enough. But we did it. And again, I'm just going to be watching for the sides to see when the sides start to lift up a little bit. And that's how I know that it's done, depending on what temperature you're starting with. So tomorrow I'm going to be having this with some leftover, like I basically made today like an Indian stew. And so we're going to have the stew inside of these wraps tomorrow. And then also I'm going to make raita, which is basically cucumbers, tomatoes, red pepper in plain Greek yogurt with a little bit of salt and pepper, and you can even put some Indian spices in that if you like. So it's going to be an Indian themed lunch. And tonight I'm going to be snacking on these yummy chips. It was really good with the sauerkraut juice there. So yummy. You can see it's starting to be ready. I can see some little bubbles kind of tell you it's close to done. But I want to see it lift up a little bit, because then what I find is you're not going to be able to just go in here with this because it's going to break a little bit. You want to be able to just pull it up a little with your finger and then stick this under to flip it. And if I go too early, it'll start ripping, which I do often. But then I back off, right? And I just wait a little bit longer and then I flip it and I pull it at another spot on the crate next, or the wrap next time. Not quite ready. It's started to rip a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. So we're just gonna push it back down, go a little longer. There's a learning curve, as you can see, even though I've been making them for a while. I don't always make it perfect, but that's no problem. So now I'm going to go from a different direction, because again, I don't want to rip that spot more. Let's go somewhere else on the pan here. This one's not that much thicker than the water one. If you use milk, you'll get a texture that's more like kind of like more like a gyro. This is again, the coconut milk's not quite as creamy as a whole milk, so again, it doesn't really take too long before it's flippable. Okay. I'll bring the computer over to show you the finished each one. Oh, we have two different wraps, one made with water, one made with coconut milk, and one botched version that we turned into protein chips. All right, there you have it. That is how you use the protein powered baking mix to make yourself some low carb, high protein, gluten free wraps. Bye for now.